Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcia Hovey. I am the Executive Director of CADRE, Collaborating Agencies Disaster Relief Effort. We have a number of brand new people on this call, so that excites me because we want to keep expanding our reach. And today we're going to be talking about emergency planning for organizations of different types. And it really is what could go wrong. I've been an emergency manager in local government since 1999 and retired from that to work to be a consultant for other organizations, churches, businesses, utilities, and then became the director of Cadre after being on the board for 10 years, became the director in 2020. So we spent our first year managing COVID. But over the years, I have written my share of plans for all kinds of things. And so distilling it down into a 2-hour segment is hard for me. So we're talking about emergency planning. The first thing is that emergency plans are alive. They should not sit on a shelf. We're going to talk today about what is planning, the challenges and solutions, communication and how you document communication in your planning efforts, coordination, how to prepare for anything, and the collaborations needed. So emergency plans, again, they should not sit on a shelf. They should not be so big that nobody's ever going to read them. So your first goal is to keep it, depending on the size of your organization, it could be 20 pages. It could be 50 pages, but the thing is that the plan itself doesn't have details. The plan itself, it says who's responsible for doing what by organization type or department type. It says what functions or hazards we're going to be addressing. Checklists, which are also listed here, are not part of the emergency plan. They're an attachment to the emergency plan. So the basic summary of what you do and how you do it should be a flow, a thought process, so that people reading it get the big picture of what's going on and don't start getting buried in, and this is how we're going to do this. And you go 2 or 3 pages into that, and then you try to pick up the thread for the vision again, and you've lost it. So in your plan, you don't say how, you say how, but not, no, you say what, but not how. And then reference within the document. If you say we have a communications policy for this, reference the document that has that policy or the details of that policy, but don't put it all here. Because you want people to be able to read it from start to finish, ideally in one sitting, and be able to understand the whole process, who's going to do what, and what we need to talk about. So you're identifying policies. In here, there might be a policy that says, and this is one of my favorite ones, when the disaster happens, we need you to come to work. If that means bringing your pets with you or your children with you, we will allow that. Now, that's a policy that obviously has to be put in place before, and that's a question that you ask your management. It's like, so what do we do if people can't come in because they're afraid to leave their families or their pets? And it creates a real interesting discussion. And then once everyone decides on we're not allowing that at all, then that policy goes in here. People are not allowed to bring their pets. If they can't come in because of that, we don't expect them to come in. That's fun, isn't it? I mean, that's the type of discussion that you want to have with your leadership, is you just pose a question to them in email and a suggested answer, and then let them wordsmith it, because that way you can get these little strategies done one by one. And you also need to recognize who your partners are, who your coordinators, who's going to collaborate with you during this event. So again, it's the plan is the what you're going to do, the checklist and the job aids, which are attachments or how you do it, but you don't put that detail in the plan itself because then you lose the flow and people don't understand the big picture. So you're going to gather information about the types of hazards that you're going to address, about what does your facility look like? What are the demographics of your facility? What hazards exist? Santa Clara County and every county has a local hazard mitigation plan. It's a very big document, but it has some things in it that could be useful for you. It has maps that show fault lines and flood zones and wildfire risk areas. It has a list of how they prioritized hazards for the jurisdiction. Cadre's website also has a lot of emergency planning information, so I just put that in there. And then within your own department, you may have people that have less, they've been there a while, they have lessons learned. They can tell you what happened the last time the building flooded, or they can tell you, maybe you find reports that talk about the last earthquake that was a big deal, and the things that people said that they wanted to do to make corrections. And you'll find most of the time that those are covered with cobwebs and nobody ever made the corrections. So here you get to do, it's your chance again to do that. Now, one of the other things about gathering information is you need to walk around your properties and look at what are you dealing with? Because your plan needs to address different types of things. I'm looking here, I can see some portable units, like mobile home type, that are not as structurally sound. So there could be issues there depending on if you're planning for earthquake, if you're planning for active shooter, how many doors are there? Where are the exits? Are they all accessible? So you just need to, find out what's behind fences. Maybe you walk by that every day, but you don't realize that behind that fence, whoops, oh, and then in this case, there's actually an endangered species on this campus. So it's not that you can just decide that that whole open area can be used for staging equipment. So that's something that would possibly happen in an event if we hadn't planned in advance. But knowing this, we can make sure that we put them in another side of the property. And then all this kind of walking through, understanding what the pipes are that you see. Are they gas lines? Are they water lines? What if they break? Is it going to block an evacuation route? Things like solar panels can fall off roofs. So, you always want to teach people to not stand too close to buildings because things can fall off roofs. If you see biohazard signs or the placards, or this sign just says custodial, so what's in there? As a planner, you want to know what's in there, and you want to know that it's properly stored so that it doesn't cause another problem for you. So that if there are chemicals in there, that they are secured in some way so they can't tip over and mix. There are propane tanks, and it might not be on your property. It might be right next door. It might be a big giant propane tank at a gas station next door. So these are the kinds of things you need to be aware of, ask questions about, so that you address them in your plans, in your checklist, more than the plan itself. But in the checklist, it should say, get a status on whatever these hazards are that are nearby, so that you know what you're dealing with. If you have to plan for evacuation, this is another part of the planning. It would be a separate attachment because you're getting into the details, but you need the demographics of the population you're working with. Especially if they're residents, how old are they? How mobile are they? What languages do they speak? Do they have pets? Can they drive? Because if you did need to evacuate, you have to plan for those types of people. We had a retirement facility for a faith group up in the mountains where I was working, and they had a lot of people that were in wheelchairs or bedbound. They didn't have any accessible vehicles there. They didn't have a wheelchair bus. Um, they didn't have anything. And they had been told, well, our fire department told us they're going to come and help us. And I said, well, that was nice of them, but please don't believe that. You need to be able to do this on your own. And so let's look at what you have. And so um, we found vehicles that maybe they could move someone in a wheelchair into a seat with a couple of their facilities people. We found a couple of pickup trucks that maybe they could put blankets down and lie people in the back seat or in the back and get them out. Because if that's all you have, you want to try to do as little harm as possible and still be able to accomplish what you need to do, which is maybe get out, evacuate. So those are, not great options. But today, that's your option. Tomorrow, maybe you do fundraising to get an accessible vehicle or a renovated ambulance, some other way to take people more safely. But you need to know that. And then what are you going to do with their pets? This is encouraging them, their personal preparedness, to have crates for their pets and plan for their pets. What possible hazards? So again, you walk around the property and you look at what could break that could become a hazard. Our water lines, drinking fountains, whatever has water in it, can that break and cause an obstacle to getting out? Is it possible to get off the curb? Are there actually ramps off of curbs, or are people going to have trouble navigating a curb? What kind of transportation are you going to have? And if it's a multi-story building and you can't use it, if you can't evacuate using elevators and you have people on top floors that have mobility issues, that's going to be a problem because your staff are not first responders. Your staff are not required to help people down from upper floors. They should not delay their own, and this is a policy thing, they should not delay their own evacuation to help someone else. They're not paid to do that. They're not equipped to do that. Even if you have stair chairs in the building that go, you put someone on it and you go down the stairs, it's a huge liability issue. If you're depending on people that have very little training doing that, they can hurt themselves. They can still hurt the other people. So the best policy is get out of the building, report to the fire department outside where the people are, and that you do have stair chairs so that they can get them out more quickly. And that's a really not my favorite answer. My favorite answer is don't put people with mobility issues on upper floors. If you're a university campus and you know that someone taking a class is in a wheelchair, can you move that class to a first floor? If it's an apartment, can you move them to a first floor apartment if they become wheelchair bound and they're on an upper floor? And those are much harder decisions that have to be made, but they can be made. So any questions about that? This is serious stuff. And you can't think about it all at once. Gathering information on other people's training that you can use so that you're not the one having to do training. Particularly if you don't have a lot of training yourself, but somebody told you this was your job now. So amateur radio, ham radio is, and Starlink now. Those are both solutions. Amateur radio is cheaper, but again, it requires planning to know if it's going to work for the situation you have. There are ham cram classes where you can get your license in one day. You can purchase a radio for less than $100. You can connect to your local ham radio disaster coordination group and be able to ask for help, or at least tell them that what your status is. Local personal emergency preparedness classes, which run from an hour to 3 hours long for people just to know what they do to keep themselves safe at home. Community emergency response team, which is more involved. It teaches search and rescue, how to use a fire extinguisher, how to do first aid, basic first aid, and work in a coordinated team either at a jurisdiction level or at a building level, so that they have roles and responsibilities. And again, these are staff members, or community members, depending on your situation. So don't let them think that they became firefighters and that they have to run into burning buildings to help people, because that's not the goal. And they need to respect their boundaries, do what they can, but do no more harm. And that includes do no more harm to them. START triage, simple triage, and rapid treatment is what that acronym is. It's a really good class that could be taught in an hour. It's part of most CERT trainings, triage in some form, and it's easy to practice. It lets people understand how to address emergency situations where the person has a life-threatening condition, to stabilize them until help can come. And then outside exercises, anytime you can participate in someone else's exercise, you're going to learn so much. Either saying, well, I'd never do it that way. Good. I hope your plan says the way you're going to do it. Otherwise, you go back and write that. It's like, let's never do it like that. And you can learn from each other's mistakes, and that's important. Sisyphus is, what is he? Greek mythology, I think. I don't know. I've forgotten now, but Sisyphus is a guy that's trying to, forever, his whole eternity, trying to push a boulder up a hill. And that's what we're doing as emergency planners, is trying to push a boulder up a hill, because the people that we're trying to get ready don't have time for us, for the most part. So if you have buy-in from from the top, or if you have everybody engaged, I want to know what you're doing. But because staff turns over and you have to retrain, and people have other priorities, and when they got their degrees and whatever their profession is, there was nothing about emergency preparedness roles and responsibilities that they thought they needed to know. So they're coming in completely cold. They're unfamiliar concepts, and it's time intensive. It takes a few hours of focus to learn what you're supposed to do. So to keep prepared, this is you need support for management, accountability for completing tasks. And that's, you need your management to know if you've assigned people to create a plan or give you some ideas, give you feedback. If they're not doing it, you have to have somebody to tell. And that's not fun, but you can't do your job if other people aren't helping you. You want preparedness to be as visible as possible. You keep like little subliminal messages around the office, around the neighborhood, whatever you're working in, so that people don't forget that this should be at top of mind. You need to give them things that are doable. So if you don't think you could do it, then they probably you got to think about how to make it practical and easy for them. You've got to be repetitive, and I'm going to show you examples of this, and it needs to be relevant. So if you have pictures of people doing good things or being part of disasters, or like another organization similar to yours that's doing something, you need to show, hey, look at what they just did. Good for them. And then the windows of opportunities, which is really taking advantage of other people's disasters, because it becomes top of mind when we watch on TV somebody else having a bad day. So during emergencies, and these, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but if, you're welcome to use any of these slides if you're trying to get a point across, and that's what I'm trying to do right here. Unfamiliar people. They don't all know each other. Working an unfamiliar problem using unfamiliar tools in unfamiliar surroundings in a time compressed environment to reach a common goal. That is a recipe for disaster. So that's why the planning is important, and this is how we prove that point in the simplest way possible, which I learned in teaching community emergency response team. This is the first day of class. They are given 50 sheets of paper, some scissors and some tape, and they're broken up into teams of about 6 and asked to build the tallest freestanding paper tower that they can. This is a real easy exercise to put on, and it's really fun to watch what happens, because you see personalities come out, and you see who the people are that are natural leaders, and you see the people that are natural bosses. And the bosses aren't always the ones that are building collaboration and sharing a common vision. And some just want to go off to the side and they're just going to do their own. And none of that works in disasters. So we go through that, and then they get different results with these. Construction paper makes it a little easier, but you can use regular copy paper too. So this is some examples. And then after this, when they're all kind of a little bit tense and upset, and they finished this exercise, and somebody won because their tower was, I don't know, 3 feet tall. I've seen towers like 6 feet, over 6 feet tall, engineers mostly, but then you ask them, what happened? Was there any confusion? Was there any tension? Did you feel stress? Did you feel any power struggle? Are you happy with the results? And then, is there a better way? If I'd told you in advance what we were going to do, if the team had been able to meet and come up with a strategy ahead of time, if you'd practiced with the tools, if you had better tools, would it reduce tension, improve communication, reduce conflict, and provide a more successful result? Absolutely. And that's why you're here. That's why you are trying to get people to understand that, yeah, we can't just say this, I'll do it later. Because when it suddenly happens, you can't do it later. And that ties into this this risk and frequency analysis, which was first introduced to me by Gordon Graham, who is a retired highway patrol officer and a lawyer, and one of the best trainers I've ever seen. You can find a few of his videos still on YouTube, but this is getting old. It's been quite a few years now since he started this. But you look at this, and you look at where you want to frequent. If you're doing training, where do you focus? And so you see how often does it happen? Well, it's a low frequency or a high frequency. And what's the risk? It's a high risk, it's a low risk. So high risk, high frequency, we practice all the time. We're well practiced. We're not worried too much about the risk. But on the left there, that upper left corner, high risk, low frequency, when you don't practice it very often, but it's going to have consequences when you have to do it, that's where you focus your attention. So it's focusing on an evacuation drill. It's focusing on a medical emergency. It's focusing on the things that catch you by surprise. And that could still be, you know, some of those hazards that we talked about. Maybe it is, when you're getting into those 3-day, 5 days, um, that planning maybe should be focused on if you think that there's going to be a huge impact once it gets beyond that point. But the rules of risk management, organizations have to strive for continuous improvement with their personnel. So this is you. And if you have a risk manager, you should be best friends. Organization supervisors have to spot problems before they become tragedies. Organizations members must have a healthy respect for the dangers and the risks they face. So that's you presenting all of the hazards that you've seen and your recommendations to them. And an organization, its personnel must be able and willing to learn from their mistakes. So if people are worried about looking bad, this isn't going to go well. We always talk about leaving the egos at the door, because we're focused on how do we make this better. Every single time you do it, it's how do we make it better. So what are we planning for? There's so many things. And the first column is more of the event, and the other side is more, has a little bit more of the impacts. And so there are different ways to do this. One is to, if you want to focus on the event, then you can create this simple chart. It's in that folder I shared with you. And there's an explanation of, you know, rating it 1 to 3 on the likelihood of occurrence, the potential impact to the facilities, the potential impact to the staff or the infrastructure, the potential impact to economy. You could change impact to the economy to, you know, your continuity of business, and then you add them up, and then you look at the top 10 or the top 5 or the top 3, and you start. That's where you start your planning. You could do the same thing with the power loss. You could make this very same hazard. Instead of the hazard, it would be the risk. And then you can do that same kind of a discussion. When I've done this with like a whole management team, I make them all come in, all of the departments, and you actually learn things, that because everyone's looking at it through a different lens, and they bring things up that could make it a higher risk than you realized it was. Santa Clara County has done this in their hazard mitigation plan, saying earthquake is the highest overall risk. Dam failure is down number 6. If you are, and again, because this is a county-wide plan, this is not as relevant to your building or your jurisdiction, because if you, for example, Anderson Dam will have the greatest impact if it fails in Santa Clara County. And right at the base of it is an assisted living home, right at the base of the dam. And I went there and asked them what their plan was for evacuation. They said, oh, they told us the water was going to go around us. Which is why you always have to challenge what people tell you. If it doesn't make sense, you need to challenge it and have them explain their thought process or their documentation on why they believe that's true, because there is a lot of misinformation out there. And we are the guardians. We're the ones that say, nah, I don't think that's going to work. We do talk a lot in local government about disasters. We talk about planning for earthquakes and fires and floods and active shooters. The reality is that we can't really plan for those. We can only respond to the impacts of those. And so the impacts are things like loss of personnel, which happened during COVID. Suddenly people weren't able to come to work. That's something you could plan for, and it would be It could be, we have a really good story of how San Bernardino had an active shooter, and more than half of their staff would not return to work immediately because they were traumatized. And so you need a plan. What do we do if our staff doesn't come to work? Loss of building use. So it could be from a flood, it could be that it burned, it could be that there's some structural problem that you need to address. Loss of power, loss of internet, loss of communication, loss of water. And this is just some, but I want you, because I was planning to have you get out and talk to each other a little bit, and then but tell me what you discovered. Somebody tell me, what had you not thought of? Or are you just ready to revolt and leave me now? You have to unmute.
Exposing more of the weaknesses. I was already aware that there were already too many, but of what disadvantages I have here if I lose power or lose water at home, and how much less able that it makes me to help as a disaster helper with the community at large. I'll be busy enough keeping myself alive here at home.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people, that's what they say. And so even planning for staff, I've talked to staff who are supposed to be disaster service workers, and they said, I'm not staying here. I'm going to go home and take care of my family, which is part of the reason you need to make sure that they understand how to take care of their family in advance. Um, Otherwise, will be the most stressful thing that they've ever done in their life, and we don't want that. What else?
Well, I mean, we were talking about, loss of power and generators and talking about I mentioned the program of PG&E giving away generators. And I think that that also is like something to explore where people don't know the resources because of, other lady that was in our room was talking about that. She says that program is still going on, and I was not aware of that. I thought that was long gone. So I think it's also kind of the proactive approach at seeing what resources are available, like identifying the problem, like, PG&E has its issues, the grid has its issues. People losing power, especially when you have medical devices, is a really dangerous situation. And so being proactive to see what programs are out there so that you're prepared if you do lose power. And that way you don't lose, hundreds of dollars worth of food. You are able to use your CPAP machine or whatever machine you have that you need. Because that can be really catastrophic for people.
Communication, how will you communicate in the disaster? You need people's phone numbers and emails for those internally and externally. You need someplace like the Cadre website, someplace that you found for your jurisdiction that gives you real-time information. Are you going to use ham radio? But within your plan, you need to talk about how you're communicating. Identifying the trusted media. So list your trusted sources of information so that people know what they are. How are you going to communicate with clients or congregations if, in case of emergency? If you do email and you do a WhatsApp and you do text, then the disaster happens. Where are they supposed to look? Because you probably don't have time to use all of them, or put them in a priority order. Like, first, we're going to send you email. If email's down, maybe we'll post it on Facebook to give you an update on what's happening. If our building's damaged, maybe we might just have to put a sign on the door that says we've moved locations. And that's the standing orders part. So if phones are down, if your normal communication is down, you need a default. Like, if the phones are down and you know it was something bad, you can see on the news or you're hearing that it was something bad and it impacted the facility. If the phones are down, we want you to come in. And maybe that's not the message for everyone. Maybe that's some key staff. And then maybe you have to work with a local radio station to put out an announcement that asks your staff to come in. There are a million possibilities, but again, it's you being as creative as you can. Okay. Now preparing your staff, because when you prepare your staff, you get buy-in. Your staff, you will find people on your staff that are much more engaged about being prepared than management, typically. And so you can get them to be ambassadors for you to keep pushing your message out. You can create games through emails, through show and tell, a supply show and tell. You have them come to lunch, bring their emergency supplies, like show me what's in your kit. Some will be very elaborate, some will be nothing. And then that way they start to think about what would I need in my kit, or pull something out, pull something out of a kit that's random, or pull anything, pull a book off a shelf and say, how could this be used in a disaster? And let them think about, what are the uses of this book? Well, maybe the pages could be used to burn. Maybe I could start a fire with this. Maybe it's a doorstop. Maybe it's protecting my head from things falling on me. But it's amazing how creative people can be if you just let them. It's like, what could this be used for in a disaster? You can support them purchasing supplies because you want them to have supplies at work and at home. So you can, there's Earthquake Preparedness Month. You could pick a site that has reasonable prices for supplies, or cut a deal with an organization. We have a couple that we use. That you say, if we do a bulk order with you, can you give us a discount? Or maybe they're already well discounted, but maybe you can pay the shipping and have the things brought to the office, and then you divide them up to everybody and they're all excited because they got new emergency supplies. I had somebody one time order a 50-gallon barrel. Showed up at the office. What's that for? Water. People, it was a conversation piece until they took it out of the office. We also have on our earthquake website a Dollar Tree list of supplies you can buy at the Dollar Tree. It's probably the most the most popular thing that I've ever done in my life is create a shopping list for the Dollar Tree. But there are a lot of things that you can get there to start your kit without having to be an expert. And so those are things you can do for your staff. Update, make sure they have an out of area contact that you have, because we all know what an out of area contact is for, right? If the local phones are busy, then you can call outside the area. You can call long distance. And so you might need their out of area contacts. If they're staying at work and they started working and they don't know what the status of their family is and you can't get through by landline, you could have someone on staff or assign one person to make phone calls out of the area and let find out. They need to have an out of area contact to coordinate within their own family. So they call this person out of the area and they can say everybody's okay. And you can tell them that the person that's with you is okay. And that's another task, but it's really important for peace of mind for the people you have working, because you want them focused on what they're doing and not being distracted, because that could hurt them. Again, a policy for family and pets, because this is something that comes up with people that aren't in emergency management. They want to know, how am I going to take care of my family and be here at the same time? Have a duty if they're off, a procedure if they're off duty. So what is it that they'll need to do? Do you expect them to come in Do you expect them to be listening to a radio station where an announcement's going to be made that says they should come in? Do you want them to stay home because you're just going to close business and for a few days until communication is restored? You can decide. And then training. You have to identify some training that everybody, like basic training that people need to have, and then have a leaderboard, post it. Who's completed the training? Good job. You can have them have a raffle for a coffee gift card or something, as people do it. Anything to get it to be part of your life. So holding evacuation drills with no prep, this is a great way to plan for evacuations, because people say, well, we don't have a plan. Okay, well, let's see what we got. Because if it happens today, this is what we got. So let's watch what they do naturally. You can assign a couple roles. So somebody that's going to be the lead outside. If you're using incident command, it would be the incident commander. Is information going to be communicated if it's a big facility? And some people evacuate to one side and some evacuate to another side. How's that communication going to happen? Who's going to do a head count? What if there's a medical issue? But you don't give them anything, no planning. It's like, this is your job. And then evacuate the building, look at where they assemble. Typically, they like to assemble really close to the building where they can sit down. That's not where they're supposed to be. They should be fully away from the building. And then that brings up, well, there's no chairs out here. Okay. So that is a planning issue, isn't it? Because if you're going to be out here for more than 5 minutes, which is what normal drills are, if you have to be out here for 2 hours, and I have a whole separate little debrief that I can give you to ask those questions of the people, because they're like, well, it's hot out here. I can't stand out here. Okay, so what do you need to take out of the building when you evacuate? I don't know, a bottle of water, an umbrella to cover me from the shade. Okay, that's what you have to do. You have to plan for yourself. How long does it take them to get out? That's always fun, because they're just they'll just stroll out. No big deal. It's just a drill. So then you give them, next time you give them a goal, and then you ask them the what if questions. What if you can't go back inside? What did you leave in there that it's going to be a problem? Even yeah. So this is fun to do, and it takes no planning. I do this in neighborhoods. I've done this at facilities, and we just observe what they do and what could be better. You're allowed to talk. I should have said that earlier.
I was just going to suggest Dwight's fire drill. The program The Office is absolutely a
Yes.
hilarious video. All the things not to do, and sometimes just to get people in the mindset before you even launch it on them. The idea of doing some type of a drill in your office. They see this video and they laugh, but then it suddenly hits them that, hey, we need to take this seriously. So it's a fun little video that I dropped in the chat.
Oh, thank you. I was going to ask you to, because yes, I love that. What's the procedure? I mean, I feel like that's me all the time. Oh, it's a fire. What's the procedure? That's one of the things you need people to be able to rattle off at least the first 3 steps of a procedure for each type of earthquake. If it's an earthquake, what is the first thing you do? Drop, cover, and hold on. They should absolutely know that. What's the next thing you do? Wait for the shaking to stop or check my surroundings. So but they should have like muscle memory on the first 3 things that they should do. And I love that video. And then making it real. And these are real simple things to do for a drill is also have somebody hide. You had them outside doing a head count and they're going, well, how do I do a head count? Well, I don't know. How are you going to know who's in the building? Well, I guess every department's going to have to tell me who was at work today and who was off. And what if somebody's off site? Do we need to check on them? So if you hide someone and they've decided, okay, we've got to process and do the head count, then let's see if they find the person that didn't come out. If there's a medical issue, you know, they go up to that first aid person that has no equipment and no training, and they go, I have chest pains, or I sprained my ankle, and they go, I might need some supplies. Yes, you should. And when you evacuate, you grab them and go out. You block an exit, put a little sign on it that says that this area is damaged due to whatever your disaster was. If they, I mean, you want them to keep emergency kits in their cars, make them go get them. Or if they bring them outside. But this is another time you can reward them with a gift card, or just plain old peer pressure. Just give them applause for what they did. You can demonstrate how a fire extinguisher is used. You can have a guest, if you're a facility that has people that are not employees there, you can have somebody kind of wander in that's confused and doesn't know what's going on, and they don't know any procedures. Someone who doesn't speak English, someone who's trapped. These are just a sample of the things that I could suggest to you. You can break up plexiglass and throw it on the ground and say, oh, the window's broken right here. What do we, you know, but that's so much to do to up the game. Okay, just, I mentioned before keeping things visible. So this is San Andreas Regional Center. This was a while ago, but, you know, I like having the hard hats. If you have a team of people and they're supposed to go, or, you know, go through the building and tell people to get out, they should have some kind of a head protection. I like having those hard hats out, hung on a wall with a vest in them, so that they're identified as part of a coordinated effort. I've had bosses say, no, that, you know, we need to put that in a drawer. It's like, no, that's not where it's supposed to be. It needs to be ready in an instant. So they've got their checklists, they've got a whistle, they've got their radios. And so someone needs to grab those, and that planning too. It's like, well, if the person that usually is in this office isn't in this office, who's grabbing that stuff? I stole this from this idea from UC Berkeley, and yes, it's very small printing. It was a big poster, and yes, it was still a lot of writing, but it was posted in every classroom on 2 campuses, so that people could be curious and read it before something happened. And they could really read it because it's just a few steps for each type of event. I don't know if I can make it any bigger for you. Oh, maybe. And I have all of these things. I'm sure you could do a better job, but I do have all of these in an editable form. You could take it, because none of us have time to do everything that we're being expected to do. And so anything that we can share, it's not stealing, it's sharing. That's up to you, but anything to make it visible. If you have a website that, and you expect the public to be prepared, the what to do in case of emergency should be on the front page, at least a link to what to do in case of emergency and all of the resources. This was like an earlier version of what Cadre's website is now. This is where I started it. Other way to engage people, to keep your plan real. You can ask questions. Gordon Graham, this was a Gordon Graham idea. Send out an email he did once a week for things that were important, high risk, high frequency, like procedures. He would send it out, and then people were supposed to respond to him, and then he would do a raffle for a coffee gift card. So these are just kind of random questions. I have a bigger list, but you know, these cause people in the office, I can hear them talking about the question because they weren't sure of the answer. Like Second one, if the ground started to shake right now after drop cover and hold on, what are the first 3 things you should do when the shaking stops? They will discuss that because they have different opinions, and none of it, as long as they are not doing anything to hurt themselves, like run out of the building, as long as they're, assessing their surroundings, then you trained them because they read an email, and then you send the answer the next day. And the answer for that one, you can give them 5 or 6 steps so they can see if they got some of them. If the phones are not working, what methods can you think of to contact the office? Now, this could be part of your plan. This could already be a training issue, or you could be looking at how to write your plan. When you're stressing preparedness, what's the most common injury after the Northridge earthquake, which was in 1994? It was cut feet, because people got out of bed, because it happened at night. They got out of bed and stepped on the ground, and things had fallen over and broken. And so how do we fix that? We make sure that we have shoes next to our bed before we get out of bed. So just this kind of stuff to keep people engaged. And then again, I mentioned the windows of opportunity. So whatever disaster happens and people are talking about it, tie it into your plan somehow. You know, and you'll get good at that over time, but just tie part of it, remind them about their supplies, remind them about the procedure related to whatever that type of disaster is. Even, we in California, we had San Jose, Santa Clara County was part of a notification of a tsunami warning after the big earthquake somewhere else. I forgot where it was. But people panicked. What am I supposed to do? Nothing. You're in San Jose. There's no ocean water is going to come this far inland. But they really didn't know. So what told me I needed to do a little bit of education on tsunami. So I took that window of opportunity because people were asking, and I made it a training, and then I added that to my plan just so that people knew in the future what to do if there was a tsunami. If you do a lot of training or you have a lot of team building meetings, these slides are a million years old. I did use this for my CERT training, but this is one of those. When I taught CERT training, I had these people for 6 different days for 3 hours. At the beginning of every class, we went through these 6 slides. Your safety is number 1. Always work with a buddy. Only do what you've been trained to do. Wear safety equipment, whatever that is for you. Or like if you have a response team, they're supposed to put certain things on before they help. Think and size up, which is a CERT term, but assess the scene before acting. So you don't jump in. If it's hazardous materials, stay uphill, upwind, and upstream. These are just like little mantras, and they could recite them. By the 3rd meeting, they knew all of these. So and then use your creativity, because we know it's always going to be different, to adapt, improvise, and overcome. Something like this, whatever is the most important thing for you to convey, do it every time you can. And, make the pictures fun. Maybe you can find cartoons or something, but you want this to just come second nature to them, because that's what's going to keep them safe. And then for your plan, others in the building. So if you're in a shared facility with other organizations, you need to know if the parent company or the property manager has a plan. A lot of times they don't. So you have to put pressure on them. Well, what are we supposed to do if? But what are the other plans of people in the building? Where are they planning to evacuate? What concerns do they have? so that you're not stepping on top of each other. So if you like using your space outside, well, we're going to have the fire engine come in this way. Oh, but this other organization said that's where they're going to evacuate their people. So that needs to be coordinated. If it's a shared space, you need to know what everyone's plans are. And then if transportation will be needed, who are you, do you have a company that's coming to help you transport people? And in some situations that's doable, in some situations it's not. But if you need accessible transportation, depending on the hazard, you may be able to have people come in, or if you know that something's coming and you want to proactively get everyone to a safer location, you could likely get accessible transportation at that point. How are you communicating with these other organizations? Do you have a parent company? Do you have a headquarters office in another state? Do you need to tell them what's happening to you? And then where are you relocating? And that might be you meeting some other people, other organizations that do similar work that could accept your evacuees for a period of time. Like if it was a assisted living facility, or even a recreation site, someplace where you could make sure that you could go. I didn't mention, but it just popped into my head, medications, especially if you have people in resident or even your staff, they need to keep a 3-day supply of medication with them when they're at work, if you're expecting them to stay at work. That should be part of their kit anyway. But if you have medication that needs to be refrigerated, start researching how to keep medication refrigerated. I just actually saw on TikTok that they're selling some little insulated device that's supposed to keep medication refrigerated for a period of time. There are also, I hope they've updated them. There are like little ice chests that you can put in your car. They used to go in the cigarette lighter, but that's not there anymore. So hopefully they've upgraded them to USBs, or that they could plug into a backup battery, like a brick type battery, so that you can keep medications refrigerated. I've had neighborhoods I've worked with where they actually bought a generator to power a refrigerator, and all of the baby formula and all of the refrigerated medication went into that one refrigerator. If you do have a generator, good for you. Make sure that you know where you're going to get fuel, depending on the length of the outage, depending on the length of the need that you have to keep your generator going. You may run out. So you need to calculate how much fuel you use, how long it's going to last. And then coordination needs to happen to make sure that you can get more fuel, particularly if you have a vulnerable population. Collaboration, again, backup site, backup services. You need to, if your capability fails and it needs to keep operating, where are you going to get that? As far as a training plan, you can decide. You have to identify what types of training you need for your organization. Create a very simple chart. If your HR department is tracking the information, you're lucky, because most don't want to track emergency preparedness information for you. Either way, track it. These ICS, these are independent study classes on the FEMA website. If you Google FEMA independent study, these 3 are, I wouldn't even put 200 in there, but it depends on the level of training that you need. ICS 100, it's just a definition of terms essentially for how the incident command system works. If you want them to take personal preparedness, you can create your own class of whatever you think is important. If they have checklists for their job, they should review their checklist regularly to make sure they can actually implement what's on the checklist. If you want them to take triage or first aid, or they need a communication training because they use a radio, or there are forms that they should review, or they participate in an evacuation or a tabletop exercise, which is just sitting around a table saying, what if? Right? Just brainstorm a what if or documentation. You just make sure that you keep track of it, and make the training be intentional. If it's not valuable to your purposes, don't teach it to them. The incident command system itself, it's a people management tool. These terms, you can change these terms, but this is just an example. If you wanted to show them how to organize, how disasters get organized, people have roles and responsibilities. They can maybe identify the fact that this is a volunteer recognition event. So there are things that one group is going to do setup and cleanup. One group is going to do the planning. One group is going to, implement things. One group is going to pay for it. So this is just a way to help them. We did this for a college graduation ceremony because there was no plan. It's like, what if something goes wrong in this ceremony? Nobody knows what to do. Low frequency, high risk. If you could please take this survey, that is the actual QR code. And I just learned that you can screenshot that and touch it, and it still works as a QR code. I thought that you actually had to go onto the QR code, but I will send this out to you as well because I know you don't have time right now. It's 8 questions. It's from the Urban Area Security Initiative, which pays for these classes. So yeah, that's the end. And I did not take you into here, but did everyone get the access to that shared drive, that shared Google Drive? So in there are sample checklists. And I probably have more recent ones, but I put these in there a couple years ago for a group that we were helping them write their emergency plans. So go ahead and browse through that. Link to the survey. Yes, hold on.